Let's drop the green flag on this episode of the Talent Tank Podcast with your host, Wyatt Pemberton, bringing you the best, fastest, most knowledgeable personalities in Ultra 4 and off-road racing.
All right. Here we go. Welcome back. Another episode of the Talent Tank. Big deep dive here. As you guys clicked on today's episode, man, here we go. Levi Shirley. Awesome. Levi, what's up?
Nothing, man. Just enjoying a cold, windy Kansas day here, man.
Well, you're the driver of the 4400 driver of the number 81 Campbell chassis car. Most people recognize you for the bright orange, which was a little bit of Yokohama, a little bit of Maxxis, orange, white, black.
Yeah, man. And this year we switched the campaign colors to black and red, and on a car better known as a Loretta, which has been my car for the better part of, it would be 5 or 6 years now. I guess 2014 was its full season. So yeah, man.
Do you feel like you're racing a dated chassis?
You know, some races, yes. Primarily when we got to go to short course races, I feel like I'm racing a dated chassis. Just the car is super narrow. I think we're 86 inches wide and we're about 112 on the wheelbase versus the cars that I'm competing against are obviously the better part of 90 and 116 plus, which really help on a short course. But when it comes to, say, King of the Hammers or any sort of woods races, I really do not feel dated whatsoever. That's been a solid car. That car has got me to the finish line more times than I can count. So that old saying of to finish first you must finish, that car is a testament to that and what the Campbells build.
I mean, kind of going into that, I mean, I know we're deep diving on your interview, like right off the bat, but I don't want to go too deep because I'm going to drop a carrot here and we'll talk about it later in the show. But you have a new car being built.
Yeah, we have a new car being built. I've kind of kept it quiet for the better part of a year because we've been designing for the better part of a year. You know, the car started off as a front engine car and it went to a rear engine car and an IFS, and it is remaining an IFS car, but you know, I never really knew what to talk about on it when people would ask me about a new car or whatever, just because like it would change from day to day. And like I said, I just didn't really know how to talk to people about it because it was evolving and changing. And like we'd come back from a race and be like, changing stuff like this didn't work at this race, so why would you want to do this on this car? So every thought of this car, we didn't just dive into it. We've taken the better part of a year and a half designing it, and stuff we've learned. And yeah, I'm super excited to kind of get more wheel travel numbers up front, more horsepower, more fuel, and hopefully it's going to be a killer car.
Well, we'll bring that up here when we get, all the way down in the Ultra 4 sections. But here in the meantime, talk a little bit of current affairs, talk about who you are, where you came from, and all that jazz. You just got back from Trail Hero, and I think you were wheeling the Tribe car that your dad had built, the Jeep. I mean, beautiful patina. Tell me about that thing real quick. Just short blurb.
Yeah, so the Sleepster, man. The Sleepster came from some guy down in Oklahoma as just a box stock 1967 Jeepster. And, Dad and I were talking one night in the garage going, man, this thing, the patina's awesome. Let's build it. And, but we want to build it right. And so Dad and I were talking about chassis designs, and Dad and I we're great fabricators, but we're not really great on the geometry side of things, just because there's a lot to it. Those guys that build those cars, like there's a reason that they build these cars. Like they're obviously extremely talented and good, and are very, very experienced. And so we wanted to build something that we couldn't build ourselves to the quality, that we can build. There's the same reason that we drive, Chevys and Fords, because we know we can't build as good a quality pickups as Chevy and Ford. So that thing went down to Tribe 4x4, and it is a monster. It basically is a 1967 Jeepster body, and it has all kind of an Ultra 4 heritage behind it. So it has like 14-inch 3.0 Kings, bypasses front, and 16 inches in the rear. It's got trailing arms, LS3, 6L80. Atlas. I mean, it is just a monster. The guys at Tribe did an amazing job on that.
Just a laundry list of the who's who and the what's what are on that Sleepster.
Yeah, absolutely. It is just an amazing thing to drive. It needs shock tuned, something fierce, you know. Dad and I built it. We use a lot of my sponsors to build the car, and you know, for the intentions that he obviously uses it day in, day out when he's, you know, living in Colorado. And then I get to take shows and do stuff like Trail Hero and wheel the crap out of it. But yeah, there's not much need for shock tuning up in the Colorado mountains. So when I got it out to the Utah desert, it was beating the crap out of me. So we need to tune that thing just a little bit.
And you might know some guys that do that, right?
Yeah, I happen to have some pretty good guys in my corners that can shock tune a car.
That's solid. So as we sit here talking, today is actually, you know, we're looking at Nationals. Nationals is this coming weekend. And by the time everyone listens to this, sorry guys, but it's on real time, Nationals will have happened. We will have known exactly what the outcome is of what is going to go down at Davis, Oklahoma. We'll all know. It'll all be laid out there. Hopefully there's official results and there's no timing issues or whatever that equals, right? But it would have happened this past weekend because that's based on the time this airs. So we recorded this beforehand, and clearly everyone knows that. So Levi, to caveat that, you know, I'm going to ask you to handicap the 4,400 race. What do you think the podium looks like?
Well, it's going to be me on the top step, hopefully, of course.
I'm going to interject. You can't act about this hopefully. You have to be very, very confident and be like, yeah, it's going to be me. And I'm going to put my Campbell chassis up there. Loretta, she's going there. She's going all the way to the top of the box. Everybody watch out.
Yeah, you know, I think we're just kind of going back to the humble Kansas roots, you know, kind of the way like, say, you and I were raised on that, and just like not being like any sort of I don't know, a jerk, just because like in Kansas, you know, that's the way we were raised, you know, yes sir, yes ma'am, and just being humble. And that just kind of, like I said, goes back to our roots. But yeah, I mean, I've had some great luck in Oklahoma. I've had some bad luck in Oklahoma. You know, last year I was poised to win this thing and lost a left rear hub on the car. So just overall, I've had some bad luck. But as far as the podium goes, you know, I'm obviously going to put myself right up there on the top spot. And then it's going to be hard to beat those dang Miller cars, man. This is kind of their deal. You know, they are great, fast going a straight line, which Oklahoma has a lot to offer, and then they're fast in the woods, and you just don't get better drivers than Josh Blyler and Eric Miller.
No, they're pretty good guys to have, and they do have targets on their backs, especially in the points race. So, but you finished. Was it 2019 that you finished third at Davis? Or is that 2018? I get them confused.
2018, because 2019, I lost that hub on the car. So yeah, 2018, we went into qualifying not knowing that my dad pulled my shifter off to give a guy a part number on it, because 6L80s, you can do manual shifting and or electronic shifting. And so they take like a special little momentary toggle shifter, and this guy was asking about it. So my dad pulled it out. And not knowing me, I show up to qualifying and the car won't shift. And I ended up rolling the car because it was in too high of a gear and I just couldn't drive out of this dang flat corner. And I get back to the pits and like, I'm like, Dad, this thing will not shift. He's like, he just gets like this like crazy look on his face. He's like, I put the shifter back in upside down on accident. And I'm like, oh no. So anyways, we started at the back of the pack that race. And anybody that knows me knows that I love chasing dust. I just love the fact that there's no pressure on starting up front. So like there's that nowhere to go but up mentality. And so starting at the back, I hunted people all day. I mean, I was on it and we ended up losing. I want to say we were outside of first by 50 seconds on the day, and we were outside of second on like 24 seconds on the day. So starting at the back to coming into third was, I mean, it was like an awesome feeling, but of course I wanted to win it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you did good. I remember being at the race where you ended up finishing third and being like, to be honest, I don't even remember who won first or second, but I knew you won third because I remember sticking my head in your window net and being like, that was solid. Like to see you have a tight, relationship with you and to see, that I'm pulling for you and what you were able to pull off was I thought it was awesome. I was so excited for you just to realize the fruits of all your hard labor to get to that point.
Yeah, totally. Man, I remember my first Ultra 4 podium, and man, that feeling still doesn't go away, standing on that podium at all.
Oh, no, right. Well, hey, so let's jump back. But as we jump back, I want to talk about, we've talked about your dad a little bit here already. Your dad's Brian Shirley. He's a retired 4,400 driver, which we don't have a ton of retired drivers. We have drivers that have quit or fallen out or for whatever. They didn't necessarily just retire from Ultra 4, but your dad's retired, and he's going to listen to this and he's going to be like, that damn Wyatt, give him a hard time about his age. Brian is not that old at all. He's like Doug Jackson, not that old at all, but they've got to a point where they're like, okay, I'm graduating. I'm going to enjoy my grandkids. And again, not that old, but yeah, your dad, Brian, and your dad, he was one of the very first people I met when I started racing in what evolved into being Ultra 4, but XRA stuff. And there's no one nicer than the Shirleys, and your dad was amazing back then. And, guys like Mike McClure that he always had around, and just the list goes on and on, a Kelly Halling, just, I mean, those guys, and you just, on and on and on for days. But that said, I just mentioned, my first, time, how I got into off-road racing, and I got in because I got a buggy from Mike Colville out of Michigan. It had some worn out Jesse Haynes 37-inch Maxxis on it. I wanted BFGs, red labels. That was the thing. And really, you could go out and buy, I think at the time they were maybe $400 on like the black market, or you could go race a race. And I was like, let's go race a race. This seems fun. It was the most expensive set of tires ever. It led to the next 12 years of racing. But leading up to that, Mike McClure, he's a Nest City, Kansas guy. You're a Kansas guy. You guys race out of Dodge City, and me being a Kansas guy as well. And no one across Pirate Eye reached out to Mike McClure. Was like, hey man, kind of give me the ins and outs, because your family had been racing XRA in 2007, maybe even before that. I'd seen your dad doing some stuff way before that. Didn't know him personally. Mike gave us, a lot of heads up, a lot of hand holding. Hey, what to expect, how to get to this first race. So we show up at that first race, 2008 XRA, as I pronounce it, fully, at Gray Rock, Alabama. And that was your first race. So I'm going to ask you, I know we're going to talk about that race further on, further down the way about what your first race was. But I just want to get that out there, that Levi's first race, and here you are at 28 years old, and you've made a career out of being a race car driver. And me, I have not made a career out of a race car driver, but our start point was the same day. Kind of funny, right?
Yeah, that day is a day that I'll remember forever. It was definitely, oh man, that was a tough day. And I thought like my racing was over at that point in time, but I vividly remember you and your crew.
Well, don't let the cat out of the bag, because that story it is one to remember at that. So man, yeah, we talked about, Kansas. You guys are Dodge City. You were born in Dodge City, right? And you've grown up there. You've been there your whole life, correct?
Yeah. I've been born and raised here. Obviously went to school here, high school here, college here. Yeah, still reside here. So
and raising awesome. A family and all. And then your mom and dad, so Brian and Suzanne, by the way, love them. If anyone, on the lake bed, you're out at King of the Hammers, go by what is now Levi Shirley Racing, or people still call it the Legacy Lucky Dog tent. They've got a hospitality tent with their pit that, they've got couches in there. There's always food, wives, girlfriends, buddies. I mean, just the beer and the cookies and the brownies. And I'm dead serious. I probably eat at least one meal during Hammers Week with your family in that tent. Like somehow we'll stop by for beers. Next thing you know, your mom's feeding us, or Miranda's feeding us, or somebody's feeding us. It's welcoming.
Yeah, I highly encourage you. If you're listening to this, stop by the tent. I don't really remember our address, something Spider Tracks Ave. You'll see the toter out front. There's going to be a tan military tent. Just a great place to get out of the wind, catch up with people, and just take a break from the elements of Johnson Valley. Yeah,
if those tent walls could talk, right? Like the stories they could recant.
I'm kind of glad they can't, honestly. That would be
that's fair. So yeah, so your mom and dad, they're raising you there in Dodge City, and then they bailed out a few years ago to move to Colorado, to Buena Vista, and do this kind of retirement thing. So leaving you and you stayed in Dodge City, and you've got two sisters, right? You've got Samantha, who I don't think I've ever met, and then Rebecca, who I know I've met. Is that right?
Okay, so yeah, I have Samantha, my older sister. Her and I are 13 months apart, and my little sister, which is I want to say about 3 years younger than I am. She lives down in Alabama. I mean, both my sisters are BA. I mean, awesome parents, awesome just in life. Highly respect them. Highly respect their spouses. Yeah. So Rebecca just had twins, my little sister. Great. I mean, she's a fantastic parent. I could not imagine having twins. And my older sister has 3 kids herself. And then obviously I have my kiddo, Mr. Dawson Payne.
Mr. Dawson. Well, talking about Rebecca, and so this is a question about your older sister. Rebecca is highly competitive. She was this competitive, power lifter. And so she'd won a lot of stuff. So she has that Shirley competitive gene. You have this Shirley competitive gene. I know your dad, I know he has it. Does your older sister have that?
Yeah. So we always make fun of my older sister, Samantha. She is 29 years old. She's done everything in life as you should do it. I mean, it is literally from, high school, going straight to a 4-year college, doing internships, getting a job, getting married, having kids, and following up everything just as you can do it, as precise. She has that mentality of just things should be done right. But she's never been a gal that is super competitive in the fact of anything extreme sports. So we call her the normal one. So we got to laugh about that. And then my little sister, which is a complete, nut job. Anything she gets started on, she sees it through. So she started shooting guns, and then she started getting into archery, and then she got into powerlifting. And that powerlifting she took extremely. She has national records as far as deadlift goes, and what else, and state records. And she's just she goes to Vegas to go do the powerlifting, world meets and stuff, or whatever they are. Now she is taking the parenting thing head on, and there's no doubt in my mind she's going to kill it on that.
Well, that's exciting. So I see, your mom and dad's, various Facebook posts. And so you kind of get to know, when you see people that having success in what they're doing, it's kind of nice to stay in touch with them and enjoy their enjoyment, right? That's, I don't know. That's one thing I think I get the best kick out of. I think there's some absolute downfalls to social media, but I think there's a lot of, obviously it's been successful because of the upside of that, being able to share in those moments of grandeur with your acquaintances.
Yeah. There's so many people that I follow on social media that I've never met in my life, but I'm so hooked on their life story just because it's so positive and has ups and downs. It's just so familiar to say my life or anybody else's life. It just, you kind of get a kick out of just watching them. You're very invested in their life, I should say. Right.
Well, and where you're at in Dodge City, I know your job, and we're going to, again, as we kind of jump forward, I want to throw this out there, but I know this will ring true with you, and being in the cattle business, which you are. When we dig into that here, the grass is not always greener on the other side. So I always have to tell myself that when I'm watching these guys, whoever they are, and their amazing social media presences, I'm well, you have to caveat with it's not always greener.
Well, you got to look at social media as a nonstop highlight reel. People don't post the bad stuff, right? They only post the good stuff. And so you only see the good stuff. So you kind of got to take all these social media posts with a grain of salt. Everything day in, day out, like you said, grass is not always greener on the other side.
I like what you said there. Not the grass is always greener, but it's a constant highlight reel. I haven't heard described that way, but that is exactly what it is, with no bloopers.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man. So you as a kid, man, so growing up in DC there, what were you like as a kid? Were you into sports? Out there, it seems like everyone I've met from Garden City, Dodge City was always big into wrestling from a dude perspective. They were big wrestlers, all the way through high school. Were you into any sports particularly?
Yeah. So growing up, I always, wanted to fit in with the norm of, basketball, football, baseball. But, my parents never really pushed me to do anything like that. It was always just me doing it. And I remember like 8th grade signing up to play football. I was like 98 pounds, so like did not hardly even tip the scale whenever I stepped on it. And they actually bumped me up into the triple digits just so I could seem more intimidating on the roster, not having a 98 pound. So yeah, I was never built to be like like a classic, football, basketball athlete. Although I did try, I played football in high school up until my sophomore year. Just did not get along good with the coach. I just like racing. I put my heart and soul into it, like weights all summer, weights every morning, going about it that way. And then junior year came around, I was obviously kind of out of it on the football side of things. We had a new wrestling coach, and that wrestling coach came up to me and was like, "Hey, do you want to do wrestling?" And I'm like, I always used to make fun of the guys that wrestled, like, wearing tights and like, groping other men and this and that. And I'm like, sure, whatever, I'll give it a try. And from that day on, I was hooked on wrestling. I mean, absolutely hooked. So I went out, my junior year, absolutely terrible. I made varsity just because I was a little bit better than the 123 pound kid, I think, at that time. Bumped up to 132 later. But, I was great muscular. I mean, I was just built like a wrestler, not built like a football player. But, my parents, they pushed me to do that, but the racing stuff always came first. So like, I remember one year I qualified for state in wrestling, but it was the same time as King of the Hammers. I had to choose. Basically, racing was more important than wrestling at that time. And my parents just said, you know what? We're obviously heavily invested in the racing side of things. Most of the time with high school sports, very rarely do anything kind of transpire into anything more than just that. We'd rather see you do this. So yeah, so I missed out, a lot of wrestling stuff or whatever state, to go race King of the Hammers.
Well, and there's some good stories around that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Absolute, man. God, we're dropping carrot after carrot, man. Everybody will be like, are they ever going to get to actually any of these great stories that they've been talking about? But we'll get there. What did you want to do when you grew up? I mean, you're obviously have in theory, a dream job, right? Growing up, like, I want to be a race car driver. Did you always want to be a race car driver?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the goal. Obviously, we started out doing circle track stuff, which is just like very local stuff. I started out when I was 8 years old, and I was absolutely terrible. I mean, like my dad was having to put like new plastics on all the time, and I wrecked more cars than I could count. I won very few races, but I did win some. Yeah, and that kind of eventually led into like kind of these little miniature stock car races that we had, which we called them Hornets, but they were 4 cylinders. That kind of transpired into XRA and Mike McClure, my dad co-driving, and then that transpired into me getting a shot at it in a rock crawler, and then where we are today, kind of the rest is history, that cliche term.
Well, Mike McClure saying that he had told me at one point, and this has always stuck with me, nobody remembers who won. They just remember who put on the best show.
I would probably agree with that.
And yeah, it took that to heart. So what was your first car?
Off-road car?
No, just first car. On-road.
Like on-road? Oh, it was a 1987 Toyota pickup, 22RE. My dad and I spent the winter building it in the shop over kind of my 8th grade year. We put Dana 44s under it, front and rear, leaf spring front end. My dad had seen this like crazy one link kind of wishbone suspension on somebody else's Jeep. So we put it underneath the Toyota, kept the 22RE, put like 38.5 TSLs on it, Interco TSLs. And I put underglow on it, and I thought it had a silver exo cage. And what's funny about that is, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. Like I literally thought I was the, big man on campus driving that thing. But that thing was so ugly. I mean, it was incredibly ugly. And on top of that, I didn't realize the genius my dad was for building this, for one thing, and, put me in something so recognizable. I could not do anything in Dodge City without like him getting a phone call and saying, "Hey, Brian, is your son, on the golf course or whatever with that pickup?" And so like I said, I couldn't do anything in town without being recognized, and had an exo cage. So it was a roll cage. So it was safe. And it was like a little extra cab. So I couldn't like load up too many of my friends in it. And it was just like, boom, like now that I'm a father, like I realize how genius that was.
Right. Small town living, but also he put you in something with a 22 RE that it's so slow. You couldn't go fast enough to get into trouble.
No, exactly.
What a win by Brian. Wow. No, so I know the Shirleys, you guys don't sell anything ever. So you probably still have that, right?
It is happens to still be in my garage at my house. So yeah. I feel like everybody regrets selling their first vehicle, regardless of how big of a turd it was.
Maybe. I think there's a romanticization. Man, I said this on Alan's podcast. We just talked about it where I mispronounced. You romanticize it, right? You romanticize what that was, or, and you're like, how good it was. And then you get back to it. And you're like, man, what a pile.
Well, dude, it's such a pile that I don't feel comfortable selling it to anybody. It's barely roadworthy. It was barely roadworthy when I was driving it. So I do not feel safe putting it, anybody else behind the wheel of that thing.
So I figured you were going to say like your first vehicle is one of those little mini trucks. You guys had those little, what were those? Daihatsus or something, the little bitty, what were those?
Japanese mini trucks.
Japanese mini trucks. And your dad always had a couple of them around. And I know you go check cattle in them, go run to town in them. I think he even helped get them street legal in the state of Kansas, even like, whoa.
Yeah. So our trailer shop, we call it the trailer shop because that's like what it originally started out doing, is we basically had the tools and the expertise to set up the farmers and ranchers around here, their pickups, their trailers, whatever, so they could go do their job. Because we're obviously huge into agriculture around here in Southwest Kansas. That is what drives this area. So Dad came across these Japanese mini trucks, and we started importing them. And I want to say we imported close to 150 of them total, straight from Japan. We had a guy that would, obviously their night times are daytime. So we had a guy that would bid on them all night, and we'd wake up the next morning and see what all trucks we got and ship them over here and import them. And they were fantastic trucks. We great to check irrigation, great to check cattle. They were obviously better than a Ranger or a Kawasaki Mule. They had full cab, they had air conditioning, they had heat. So they just worked great for the agricultural thing around here.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, you guys always hauled one to races. That was kind of like a golf cart or razor before razors were being raced, or side by sides being raced. It was, you guys would have the little mini truck, and you'd haul. There'd be a spare 39 and then a toolbox, and you pile in that little thing. And they were all, the right hand drive, some, and then some were left hand. It was like your dad would walk through like what the configuration. Each one had a different configuration. He was always trying to get me to get one. I was like, Brian, I don't know where I would ever drive that. In and out of my driveway. Like that was the extent of it. You're like, oh yeah, I take mine to go get like coffee in the morning. Like I just tool around town, and I'm like, that's pretty awesome.
Oh, dude, I drove one. I drove one occasionally to high school, but we still have that exact same one, and I've been itching to get it to a race. It's pretty cool. It has a scissor lift, so you could like, if you come to a crowd of people, you can like just like pick yourself up and watch the race from above everybody. And it has like a tilt bed, but no, it's just a workhorse around here, around the our recreational ranch, as we like to call it around here.
So what are you into outside of racing before we get fully embedded in that? There's a lot of cool stuff around that area. The river, razors. Now that your mom and dad have a place in Buena Vista, all the mountain trails. I think you're into razors out there. I even think you're into jet skis. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. There is, we obviously have I get this like question asked a lot. Like, where do you go practice? Like where do you go? Like I mean, it's Kansas, and little known fact about Kansas, it is like next to Rhode Island. It has the least amount of public ground, that you can go recreate on in the United States. So if you think about that, United States is, huge. Kansas is like obviously all used up by farming and ranching. It's all private. So we don't have anything that we can actually go besides our own fields and our own stuff that we can go wheel and have a good time on, besides privately owned stuff. But we do have the Arkansas River that runs right through the heart of Dodge City, Kansas. Literally runs right through the downtown, but it's bone dry. It's been bone dry for, my entire life, 25 plus years. It has never had any water in it whatsoever. It gets dammed up further up at the John Martin Reservoir in Colorado. Then obviously all the irrigation around here sucks to dry. So it's been dry for 25 years, and it is the most awesome razor riding, dirt bike riding, whatever that you'll ever ride in your life. It is like literally probably a good chunk of it, probably 50 miles, is just whooped out straight line as fast as you can run. If you imagine curves and cutting, and it is just a blast to go run. So that's kind of like where I practice and tune and really just kind of dial in the skills on the, on the razor to kind of prepare myself, kind of hand-eye coordination for the coming races. But, outside of that, I love my 1980s jet skis, my old stand-up jet skis. They take up a majority of my time, and my wife absolutely hates it.
They can't love everything, right?
Exactly. I told her, I said, honey, I could be chasing 30-year-old women around, but I'm chasing 30-year-old jet skis around. And to me, that's fun just because there's no pressure involved. It's a great workout. And, every Thursday night, my buddies and I load up, go up to the lake, and have a good time. We bring our families, hang out. And so it's just kind of like a good, R&R, more or less.
That's fair. So we've talked about your wife, Miranda, a few times. How long have you guys been married?
God, why would you ask me that, Wyatt?
Don't you have
I should have
engraved on your ring or something on the inside? That's how mine was. I had to look at it. Like, what year is this?
Well, yeah. I think we've been married 4 years. We've been together for 10.
Yeah. So you guys have been together since you were like 18, 19 years old. Like,
yeah, I was 18. So
now, is she a little bit older than you?
Nope, she's younger than me. I actually started dating her. She was 17 and I was 18. But like I said, I think the statute of limitations are up on that. So I think we're good.
Oh, terrible. So, and we did talk about college a little bit. I really love her. I've only met her a couple times, but she's a K-Stater. She's a graduate of Kansas State University, and that is my alma mater as well. And anyone who is willing to wear purple on a regular basis, either for sporting events or just because it's Monday and it's what's in the closet, you just have lots of purple, I'm a fan of.
Absolutely. We wear a lot of purple around here.
And I've seen that on your social media. Like, there's Levi with some K-State on. I'm like, yeah, you can't hardly get around out in Western Kansas without, every pickup truck has the front license plate as a Power Cat. It is what's talked about. Because Kansas State University being a land grant college really supports the agriculture. It's the extension offices, all the farming pretty much rotates in and around the university and the university outreach. So they tend to own as far as, the rural community is behind them.
Yeah, absolutely. They support the agricultural side of things here. And so obviously that's what this community is built on. So they are definitely the favorite team around here day in and day out.
And they've done pretty good this year, beating OU when OU was ranked 5. No, don't get me wrong, we lost to Central Arkansas, but we won against OU. We won against Texas Tech. We won against TCU, and TCU is my wife's alma mater, the other purple and white. So my house is purple versus purple, and that was a week ago. And then this week they were off, but we lost Skylar Thompson. That's sad. But, I was talking to somebody last night, and I know people listening to this are like, damn it, Wyatt, get off ball sports. We don't listen to ball sports. We don't care about your Midwestern crap football. But we're talking to this guy. He's an Iowa Stater, and we may be playing a Big 12 championship between Iowa State and K-State. And we're like, yeah, man, championship like Farmageddon. It's going to be combines versus combines right?
That's hilarious.
Oh, farmer v farmer.
I wish I could talk more about the football side of things, but all my buddies and stuff are obviously very into it and can tell you like exactly the schools and the records and this and that. And I'm like, I love watching it. I love drinking beer and I love going up to Manhattan, Kansas. Like that is probably my favorite place on earth. Outside of some of these other places I could go wheel at, if I had to move anywhere, it'd probably be Manhattan, Kansas. Just that community is amazing. My race car actually gets wrapped up there at JS Signs. My powder coating gets done up there. So it seems like all the time, I'm going to Manhattan, Kansas.
Really? So John Stroh does your wrapping. I did not know that. I know Stroh.
So that's funny. Stroh is an amazing dude. He is a creative dude. John Stroh has wrapped my cars for the past 3 or 4 years. And that is amazing. I didn't know you knew John. So
partied with him 20 years ago. Even my Bailey bender, my sheet metal bender, the magnetic press breaker, whatever you want to call it. It came from Stroh. I bought it from him maybe 5 years ago. What else did I buy? Oh, I got a Bailey. I've got a tube roller that I also bought off him, but he did some stuff for me way back in the day with, press breaking and making some picture frames. They're huge picture frames. They're like, 4x8 or 5x8, something like that, out of back when bright polished aluminum tread plate was cool, like on stuff. So,
you're showing your age there, buddy.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. Terrible. Yeah, man. I like him. I knew he did a bunch of stuff with like sand cars and roundy rounds.
Yep, he's big into that. He is literally the most creative guy I know. I really look up to him. Like obviously we know some pretty creative people between us, just in the off-road world, because you gotta be, right? I mean, fabrication is like it. Like that dude ranks right up there with all of them, and he happens to do my all my wraps and stuff. So.
Well, wow, what a small world that, you talk Manhattan. I do love Manhattan. I really do love it. I'm kind of like you. I would move back there if there was like a possibility. But then at the same time, I have to think about, man, have I romanticized it to be what it was when I was in my early 20s to what it is today? Now I'm in my early 40s. So I don't know, but I do love John Stroh. He's a great guy. And that's awesome that he's the one that's taking care of your wraps. He's a good dude. Hopefully he listens to this and be like, man, yeah, I know Wyatt. Hell, God, really?
I'll send it to him. Don't worry.
Perfect. But no, let's talk about back to you and Miranda and her K-State. And you guys have been together for 10 years. You guys have a 2-year-old, Dawson, and now you're a dad. She's a mom. How's that? Like, tell us about Dawson. I mean, I love how knowing you as when you were a kid for the most part to now you have kids is kind of a conundrum.
Ooh, they say like if you were a wild child, more than likely your kid is going to be the same way as payback. And your parents are going to sit there and just laugh and smile watching that, wild child pay you back for what you did to them. And that is exactly what happened with my kid. He is into everything. He is wild, but he's a dang good kid. But yeah, man, just being a dad is amazing. It sounds so corny, and I tell everybody that's going to be a new parent, because I'm somewhat of a new parent myself, but I feel kind of like a veteran now. It's been 2 years, and we
battle hardened.
Kept him alive. Yeah, battle hardened, and a lot of the stuff that I have forgot about, that has like happened over the past couple of years. I've just like planted at the backside of my memory. But as we're kind of talking about having a second kid or whatever, which I hope it happens. It is literally the best thing that's ever happened in my life is being a dad. I can say I can honestly put that over racing. I can say I can put that over any win I've ever had. It is just like so rewarding. As corny as that sounds, it is literally the best thing in the world.
I don't think it's corny at all. I think it's awesome. I think when you get a look at them, I mean, and when you start to see, every day as they discover something new or they pull off some new talent or feat, or it kind of gives you a little, puts a little tear in your eye. Like I made that. And then when they get to certain ages and they start having success and realizing their own successes, that you get to, live vicariously through their successes, which I know I see that out of like your dad, he lives and breathes Ultra 4 racing still, but he's doing it vicariously through his son.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the relationship that, I hope to have someday too. Like I don't really know at what point am I going to get out of racing and let, Dawson take control of his own racing as, my dad did with me. And maybe he'll like to go play the tuba in a freaking band. I don't know, man. Like I hope he loves racing as much as I do. I've been around plenty of people that they have been into racing, but they push their kids as far away from it as possible because there's no money in it and blah blah blah. Like end of the day, I want my kid to be happy. I don't care about any sort of money side of things. Obviously I want him to be financially, independent, but I want him to enjoy life. And if that's racing, that's what matters to me. So
would you be happy if he was the tuba player for KU's marching band?
No, at that point, I'd probably disown him.
Fair enough. I want to make sure we're on the same page. Support until we've gone too far. There's a too far.
Yeah, no. If he's a tuba player in K-State's band, I mean, by all means. But KU, probably not going to happen. Probably not going to. He's going to have to figure that one out.
Somebody sent me the GIF yesterday. This is just yesterday. And it's of the K-State marching band when they did the Jayhawk with the Starship Enterprise, and the Starship Enterprise looks like it's penetrating the Jayhawk's mouth. It's terrible. It's terrible that the marching band pulled this off. It was supposed to be this celebration of, I'm not sure what Starship Enterprise had to do with it still to this day, but it was very phallic to the Jayhawk.
That's the best thing ever. I mean, put PC aside, that took some guts, man.
I don't think they realized what they were doing. I really still believe to this day they didn't think it was going to be that terrible. Anyway, well, I digress on that one. So Miranda, you guys have been together, like I said, 10 years. You met, was she in high school? Dodge City? She Dodge City too?
Yep, exactly. She was so I just graduated high school, and she was a junior in Cimarron, Kansas, which is about 15 miles to the west of here.
That's the same number though, right? 15 miles and 15 minutes. Same.
Exactly.
Same distance.
No, exactly. Exactly. I mean, straight line, Kansas, set the cruise 70. Yeah, it's exactly. So anyways, but yeah, no, we met at my buddy's house, and the rest is his history. She, is like this good church girl, family background. And I had to kind of pull her in the direction of off-road racing and, probably not the most churchy people in the world. I probably can't say that, but yeah, you know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say by that.
Yeah. Well, the fact that we're recording on a Sunday morning, probably after you went to church already, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But no. Like I said, she is just like came from the super sheltered, kind of family and not really getting out much. And she obviously married a guy that experienced one night in Jellicoe, old XRA parties and stuff. So I'm kind of a seasoned veteran when it comes to parties and what I've experienced. So yeah.
I think that's easy to say. You were very well versed by the age of 19 in dumbassery.
Yeah, it was just like, going to parties just like in like college and stuff. It was like everybody sitting around playing beer pong. I'm like, and I've experienced one night in Jellicoe, Brannock parties and all that stuff. And it was like, is this all you guys are going to do? You're just going to sit around? Where are the pit bikes and fireworks? And where's the commuter van doing donuts in the field? Like,
where's Adam Woodley?
Where's Adam Woodley when you need him? So like nothing has ever compared to anything like that.
But I'm going to tell Levi from the flip side, I've done all that and I still haven't figured out anything that is compared to that. Like that whole era of booyangs and which the mini pit bikes and mini bike races after races, Adam Woodley in a rental 15 passenger van cutting donuts in the dark with the lights out, and the only thing going off in the car or in the van is people's flashes from cameras. like we didn't even have this like predates the iPhone. Oh man, wow, great memories, flashback down memory lane. So yeah, so she didn't experience that, but was she, and so she wasn't an off-roader. Have you converted her to off-roading? Because I think looks like she enjoys razor rides and leaf looking, right?
She enjoys them. Yeah, she absolutely enjoys them as long as they are at a slow, non-race pace. I have made her puke on multiple occasions just being my passenger. You know, she gets motion sick and stuff.
Oh,
so
terrible.
let's just say we will never be that husband-wife power team that you've seen in the past at races of, driver, co-driver. We're just going to have to stick to leaf looking with her.
Well, but she does enjoy it though, outside of if you're going at a small pace, right?
Yeah, but I have such a problem going at a slow pace. Like even in the razor, in the mountains, whatever, like I'm like, screw the scenery. Like I'm looking at the trail in front of me and that's all I worry about. I see jumps, I see rocks you got to go around. It is training day for me. And regardless of who my passenger, you could have the Pope as my passenger and literally I'm going to drive the same way.
We're going to be fully getting it. Well, do you let her drive ever?
Oh yeah. No, she drives. So like, I have like a 2016 Polaris Razor Turbo that has 1 million miles on it now. It's like 7,000 or 8,000 miles on it now. And they've been hard miles, but I leave it in the garage here at the house. So like if I'm out of town and I don't have it with me or whatever, like I get pictures and videos of her and Dawson out just like cruising in it, taking it out because they're street legal here in Dodge City, Kansas. So yeah, so she drives it. She loves it. It's time to get a 4-seater.
Well, yeah, and especially if you guys are talking about maybe having, a little sibling for Dawson. I mean, I'm looking forward to, let's call it right now, 16 years from now, like a head-to-head challenge between like your kids versus the Miller kids and everyone else who's in this generation that are now having kids that are current top of the, cream of the crop, some of the best off-road drivers in the world are all having children. And then, so we're going to have that generation of them all come into play here 16 years or so. It'll be awesome.
Yeah. It's so funny. Cause like a bunch of us had kids just right at the same time. We have, Waylon Campbell had his son River.
That's right.
Eric had his son Nixon. Bailey is now expecting and Brian. And so there is going to be a flood. So we know the future is bright with Ultra 4 racing just because we're going to have that second generation or third generation now, really. I mean, what you say, probably third generation?
Third generation. Yeah. For a lot of people. But so does this mean, I mean, this is a dead serious question here. Have you gotten in like your request for Hammertown to get a location in South Hammertown? The quiet, the retired-ish, where it's a nice neighborhood down there, Levi. It's a nice neighborhood.
Oh yeah. Versus, being around the Indiana crew, which is generally up till the wee hours of the morning. Normally some fireworks being on, but we're probably going to be moving to the south side, the gated community, more or less.
Gated community. That's the great way to. They don't let just anyone in there. You have to go through like 6 forms of background checks. You have to be over a certain age, your whole crew. And then minimum, you need X amount of kids per, there needs to be a ratio,
A formula just to get in there. Yeah. There's security guards that let you in there. I mean, there's going to be gates. We're going to really do it upright this year, especially as our kids kind of are, they're more mobile this year and they're able to run around. So yeah, we're going to have to put some pretty strict safety precautions. And anybody listening to this, I would say that, if there was a daycare service offered at King of the Hammers, you can make bank. So I'm just putting that plug out there.
I think they could. I really do believe they could clean up. Especially like if they did like the 5 and unders or the 7 and unders, that because there are people that have their kids out of school that have brought them out there to experience, but every day on the lake, I don't know, man. Like I do recall Ethan Howell, which Rhonda and Matt Howell's son, he's in high school or maybe he just graduated. Him being there, the last couple of years and doing homework, like sitting in the tent, their hospitality tent, doing his homework because he was skipping school that week to be on the lake bed, but he wasn't missing out.
It was funny because I was actually that kid when I was, I was of age to race King of the Hammers. Obviously, I was that kid doing homework on the lake bed at one point in time.
There you go. See? So So does Miranda. I'm still laughing about the South Hammertown, the gated community. The HOA dues are a bitch. That's oh man.
Are you going to be an HOA guy?
No. I'm. I lived in South Hammertown this past year, and it was quaint. It was quaint. Picket fences and dogs peeing in their own lawn. It was awesome.
Did you have to bring your lawnmower and make sure your grass was like shorter than your neighbors?
Yes, there was a competition. It was solid competition. So Miranda comes to most of your Ultra 4 races. Not all of them, but most of them, right? She enjoy it for the most part?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like we're learning, the traveling deal is the hardest. When Dawson was probably under a year old, able to throw him on an airline, before he was even one, he'd been on like 16 flights or something, just insane. So he was great at traveling, but now that he's more mobile and loud, nobody wants to, they get really obsessed over their own kid. But as far as noticing anybody else's kid, yeah, there's some like very bad ones, but the traveling deal has been a little bit more tough for us. The first race that they drove with me to this year was in Crandall, Wisconsin. It was 20 hours. And that's a long time for a 2-year-old, not even a 2-year-old in a motorhome and, bouncing off the walls. And we drove it straight through because we were running late as usual. So, but yeah, they try to come to about every race with us.
That's all. Well, I look forward to seeing both of them here. Well, this past weekend, a week in the future. Right?
Yeah, man. Oklahoma is our essentially more local track. It is 5.5 hours away from us. So it's a nice trip. So they're definitely going to make it there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So she's there. She's supporting you. What all does she handle for Levi Shirley Racing? She handles a bunch of stuff for you, right? Checks a lot of boxes.
Yeah, she obviously, she's in charge of all my apparel. She's in charge of making sure the toter's clean. She handles all of my bookkeeping, my bill paying. So yeah, so she handles, and I'm probably missing. She runs my social media as well. I run my social media, but she is definitely the more business side of social media, saying, "Hey, you need to post about this, or you need to do this," versus I would just be posting random, probably jet ski photos 24/7. So yeah, she is a saint. And, my mom used to help me quite a bit with that stuff, and now kind of transferred the reins over the past 2 years, kind of as it has transferred from Lucky Dog Racing into Levi Shirley Racing. So to have that teamwork and to be able to have her do that, like there's no way I could manage the race car, everything, and the bill paying and all that.
Well, I can't help but draw the parallels between, agrarian society, which is what Kansas is. It's ag farms and I'm going to say the parallels being farm wives and race wives, and how the parallels between them, handling all the books while the guy is out, the husband's out, on the tractor or working the cattle or whatever that is. You're in the shop or at an event, and she's dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's for you. Fair?
Yeah, absolutely fair. Without her, I couldn't do what I do. So, huge shout out and thank you to her.
Oh, absolutely. Well, so growing up though, BS Trailer Sales, was it Brian Shirley? Was it Brian Shirley Trailer Sales? So BS Trailer Sales. It always made me laugh.
Yeah, don't ask. That has always been like as a kid, like I'm like, Dad, why did you name it BS? Like, so everybody called it B and S Trailer Sales for growing up, not BS Trailer Sales. So, but no, so it stood for Brian Shirley. This guy just had to totally capitalize it, and truthfully, it was probably great advertising. I mean, like really, the name recognition behind that. You're not going to get confused with anybody else, No
one's going to mess that up and put you in that same box. But that said, when you guys see, and this is my memory, so if my memory is wrong, please correct me here. You guys were selling a lot of like cattle pots and grain trailers and stuff like this. This wasn't little 18-foot car haulers. You did those, but I think at one point you guys were like a very large seller of the big cattle trailers. Is that right?
No. We never sold cattle pots or big grain trailers. Our bread and butter behind the business. It started off as trailers and doing like repairs on it, to selling stock trailers, bar tops or horse trailers and car trailers. And then it eventually, climbed into enclosed trailers. And then I'd probably say 80% of our business after that grew into pickup accessories. Like that was the bread and butter, like flatbeds on pickup. I mean, I don't know how many we probably install. We were not a huge shop by any means, but we do it probably on average at least two a day, if I were to imagine. So that it grew into putting hitches in pickups, brake controllers. Like I grew up being 10, 11 years old, pulling customers $70,000, $60,000 pickups around back and doing a brake control install myself on them, to, grill guards, to, mainly just truck accessories. That's kind of what the business turned into.
Well, I'm glad you cleared that up, because in my head for all these years, I've always thought you guys were the big pot trailer guys and grain trailers. Wow. I'm glad what I had in my head has been wrong for 12 years. I think that's epiphany level.
Yeah. Here you go. We were just the flatbed installers. So
I got you. And then at some point here in the past handful of years, your dad, I remember hearing this story. Your dad someone came in to buy BS Trailer Sales, and because he just had decided to retire, or that made him decide to retire. And I remember you being, getting tapped, like, do you want to buy the business? Do you want to carry this on? And you kind of said, I don't think I'm ready for it. Is that about the timeline, 4 or 5 years ago or so?
Yeah. Probably about 4 years ago now. And that might even be a little bit of a stretch. We had hired an individual that was a very, 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 very smart, business savvy individual to basically fill in for, say, my dad, when my dad would be off racing or flying or, whatever, so he kind of transferred more into the retirement side of things. That individual, Bo, actually is his name, Bo Ricky. He actually co-drove for me my second King of the Hammers I ever raced. So he's an awesome dude. We hired him 2000 and probably 16, 17. And he worked for us about a year, and he formed a game plan. His wife wasn't having the best time at her job. And he said, you know what, screw it. Brian, do you want to sell a business? And, Dad thought about it. He's like, yeah, I think I would. And, unless, Levi, you would like to kind of continue it on. I was 23 years old at that point in time. And, I see how hard my mom works at the books. I saw, the blood, sweat, and tears that, went into that business, and kind of they were starting to have grandkids, from my older sister. And I never wanted to be the reason that they couldn't retire and go enjoy life. Cause, more than likely, if I were to keep the business, there'd be quite a bit of a learning period at 23 years old on how to properly run the books and how to do stuff, to where she would have to stay around for a number of years until we get trained enough to basically be self-sufficient, and you just never know what's going to happen in life. And so I said, you know what, I'm not mature enough to do this. I want to see them happy. They have given me so much to, to so many life skills that I think I'm going to go try this racing thing. I don't know if it's going to be a good venture or not, but I'm going to try it. The trailer shop, I loved it. It's what I knew. It's what I planned on doing for, my entire life. Like that's what I was going to take over, and that's what I was going to do. I really have a passion to racing. I saw a unique void that, I could possibly, fill or get into with the off-road side of things. So I ultimately decided to choose that route, sell the business, let my parents enjoy their life and retirement, and kind of start my own thing.
Well, I think there's something extremely poetic about that story. I think that even at a young age, you were able to recognize how your decisions impacted those around you that you love. And sometimes the easiest decisions are the hardest decisions, or sometimes the hardest decisions are, exactly that. And I think that's kind of poetic that you were able to step back and say, I could absolutely do the trailer business, but is it going to be what's right for the entire family? And also I want to be a race car driver. So there's always that, right?
Yeah. But like, I don't know, if I would have had any other business going, I probably would have, chose that. It wouldn't necessarily had to be racing. It was just something that like I was racing in Europe quite a bit. I was starting to get kind of the wheels under me as far as like my social media goes, as far as everything with racing and sponsorship goes, that I'm like, don't stop now. Like there's just that, like, you're so young, like right now's the time you need to be doing this stuff. Even at say 30, you decide to pack up the racing thing and start a business, whatever. You're so young at that point, like I'm a big guy into like, obviously podcasts and, listen to Gary Vee or Andy Frisella from First Form, to where they're just super business savvy podcasts, to where, they say all the time, like you have time to screw up and still start again at that, but I've also heard the term, like, don't wait until your 30s to start doing what you should have done in your 20s. Like I get that, but at the same time, I don't want my life to have any regret. And I'm so passionate about the racing thing. And I know I'm obviously very, very talented at it, that I don't want to see it go by the wayside just to conform to society. Like I look up to a lot of different people in the sport. One of them is my good friend, Eric Miller. I look up to that guy. That guy came from a line of doctors, right? And is very, very successful people. And he stepped out from that going, you know what? Like, he's obviously very, very intelligent dude. He could have been that guy, but he's like, you know what? I'm gonna try this racing thing. And then you look at guys like Lauren Healy, that came away from his very, very important, well-paying, oil job into the racing, making it work. I'm like, you know what? If there is a time, now is going to be the time for me to do that.
Hey, you've got me, you're preaching to the choir talking to me about that. I think what I've seen a good handful, multiple handfuls of guys that I do have a lot of respect for, and have seen them come through the ranks or show up, and like yourself, knowing you for prior to even being like a legal racer, and what you've done with that, and the ability to wear, I'm looking at you right now, you're wearing a Yokohama hat, and the representation you have of that company and your passion about your stuff. Like I was fully shocked. Your family in Lucky Dog Racing, you guys ran Maxxis tires for absolutely ever. And everything Creighton King, I know you guys, you're buying the relationship. That's what it is. And to see when you moved to Yokohama, I mean, I think it threw the industry back, but it threw myself back, going, man, this guy, he's making moves, he's making changes, and he's fully embracing what this sport is, just not, taking what is given to him. He's actually going and fighting for opportunities. And you can do that in the business world, but then turns out you're in the business world. It's just a different business. People can look at it all day long, and like listening to Eric Miller, and I've had him on the show. He was, last spring, right after King of Hammers. And then, having Lauren on, having these guys on that you look up to, I think the industry looks up to, for what they've done to bring in money and sponsors and attention, and how they've made that their lifeblood. It's pretty awe-inspiring. And I see you doing that as well. You've done a bunch of things that are just way out there, that I was actually planning to touch on it way later, but I think now's the perfect segue to it. Is last year, Ultra 4 went away from carrying the live feed. They did. It was a dollar thing. Dave looked at it as it was a dollar line item. It cost a whole bunch of money. He didn't feel like he was getting the return on people watching it live. The thing was, a lot of people might not have watched it live because of timing, and the right way to put it, and this is probably gonna say it the wrong way. Things do come out of my mouth the wrong way on a regular basis, is people have some free time during the week, hence why King of the Hammers is on a Friday, because he wanted the people sitting at their office who aren't able to make the lake bed, were able to watch it online. While they're at their job, you're basically stealing time from their job, which, again, that's neither here or there on that argument. But when you're doing the live feed, it's on Saturday. Yeah, man, they've got baseball tournaments. They've got their kids horseback riding. They've got, any number of things going. They've got honeydews, or they've just got to go to the grocery store, or they got laundry going. It's just not the things that you knock out during the week, that you can't do during the week. So the live feed might not have got a ton of watches live, but come Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, people would go back and see and jump through. Well, that went away, and Levi Shirley shows up. Levi live streams from the inside of your car an entire event. Now that I've got you on, what drove that decision? Like, who brought that tech to the table and said, hey, let's do this? Who brainstormed and came up with that idea to do it?
Honestly, my good friend and media guru, Corey Nasso from Pitkin, Colorado, he has taken over my media and my videos for the better part of about 2 years now. He went with us to this race, and he was talking about it on being able to do live stream. Now, I've seen people do live stream, but he literally set up the whole thing from start to finish. I did not fully appreciate what exactly he was doing. He was like, "Hey man, we're gonna throw this GoPro on your car, and I'm gonna leave my phone with you the entire race so it can stream properly." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool. I'm focused on the race. I'm not focused on that. Like whatever." So it wasn't until after the race I realized how cool that really just was. I went back and read the comments and saw the reach going, holy crap, like what did we just pull off? We were literally the first people to ever pull off a live stream an entire race, from a car. And it's a hard thing to do.
There was a total void and you guys filled it. And everyone watched that race through your eyes.
Yeah, exactly. They saw exactly, we missed first by like 20 seconds with Josh Blyler, and there was some Ultra 4 timing issues, surprise on that still to this day, I really don't know who won that race. But anyways, yeah, there was a total void that needed to be filled. And I feel like just social media and media is going towards that. I don't feel like people really care about watching an entire televised broadcast race. I mean, they do, but like if we revert to any other sport, like say F1, for example, like I would rather watch Lando Norris via what he sees and everything, or be able to select on the driver and pick what live stream we want to do. And I still think there's a huge void for that, for Ultra 4 to be getting cameras on these cars and be able to broadcast like that. That would be huge.
I think I know it comes down to dollars. It's not an easy tech to pull off on a mass scale, but if you can, shoulder that burden on your own, I think it'd be cool if Ultra 4, if there were drivers that were doing that, Ultra 4 had the ability to toggle and grab your stream and feed it into theirs like an aggregate, so they could flash over and say, hey, we can do this. I mean, they do that somewhat at King of the Hammers, but King of the Hammers has its own separate massive media marketing, televising budget and team, Travis Walder's team, and what they're able to pull off, literally bouncing video signals off of satellites to get them uplinked to the world. Mind blowing. It's
amazing, and I look at it from the business side of things, going like, man, like how can we monetize off of this? How could we almost do a pay-per-view to basically sell that? And I know there's a way to do it, and it's just like I said, it all comes down to dollars and kind of rolling that dice and figuring it out.
Well, at a minimum, what it does is, even if you aren't able to monetize it for pay-per-view, what it does is you get product placement, you get logo placement, and you get to represent and hold up your end of the bargain that you've made with your sponsors. And you've got some amazing sponsors. You put their logos in playing an awesome view site of that onboard camera, and you're giving back, or you're earning each dollar that they're giving you.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely say that.
So outside of that, as we continue down the path, you guys run some cattle today, right?
Yeah, we run some cattle, also known as recreational ranchers, which is trademarked, by the way. Just kidding.
Hobby farmers. Hobby farmers.
Yeah, exactly. It's so we're not big cattle producers by any means, although that has basically come from that is my family's roots, is the cattle market. So basically Dodge City in like Ford County that we're at, like we're in Dodge City in Ford County. How funny is that?
I've always laughed about it my whole life.
But anyways, we are the basically cattle hub of the world. We have 2 packing plants here. Here in Dodge City, we have 2 packing plants. Each one of those packing plants kills 6,000 head of cattle a day apiece. So just in Dodge City, there are 12,000 head of cow a day killed. And then you go over to Garden City, which is 50 miles to the west of us. There's one there. Then you go to Holcomb. There's one more. And so there are, they say that Southwest Kansas produces 75% of the world's beef.
They absolutely do. That is truly the number. And it comes right out of there. Everyone gets it trucked in, which was this problem back in like the early days of COVID, what we were 2 months into COVID. And, they said that it ran through at least, I think, the Holcomb plant. So then they shut down Garden and Holcomb, which is like Montfort and IBP. And then you guys there in Dodge, I think, had at least one shut down, or did both of them shut down?
Yeah, no, we had one that shut down during the COVID deal and go to about 50% on that. And then the second one stayed open. They had the mindset of letting COVID run its course and kind of the herd immunity. So they took a gamble, and within a month or 2, COVID had ran through there. Seemed like a lot of the employees had it, and they kind of developed a herd immunity. The cattle markets were down. They were killing it as far as like profits go, because they were the only ones obviously operating at full capacity. And they were able to keep the production up, because like you want to see a mass like chaos is like, you want to see a meat shortage, you shut those plants down and see what happens. And you talk about, we supply 75% of the beef to the world. Shut down one of those plants, you're talking like some major kind of downstream effects. So,
well, not just downstream, upstream. Yeah. Well, I would talk about the upstream from the producer standpoint, all the cattle farmers, cattle ranchers, all your feedlots, all of that takes everything that's in place to take from hoof to box beef, everything in that process. When it backs up hard. And there was such a glut of beef on hoof walking around all the Midwest, not just everything that was piled up in the feedlots. Well, feedlots are, they're on a certain time frame. You get them in at this weight, you feed them, you put on X many pounds per day through this many days. It's a formula. It's a formulaic equation. You know exactly what that beef is going to do, by what day it will be ready, and they are forward contracted to supply that contract to the slaughterhouse. And if that doesn't happen, then they start backing up. Then there starts not being room in the feedlots. Then there starts not being a room, going through the sales, and then that leaves the producer with what is cheap. I mean, it just backs up the cost. But then on the flip side, on the other side, the boxed beef side, where it's being shipped out to grocery stores and for distribution, they couldn't get enough of it. Right. So it went through the roof. We saw hamburger here in South Texas go from like $3.40 a pound to like $7.50 a pound. That's like ridiculous. And people couldn't get it.
Right. I mean, there was lines in the grocery stores, and those grocery stores were completely empty. But yeah, that whole COVID deal, I mean, the farmers and ranchers are resilient people. They are the toughest people you'll ever meet in your life. So my hats are off to them for basically surviving through that stuff, because they were feeding cattle and pigs and everything like that at a loss. So anyways, where I was going with this whole deal,
we got sidetracked so bad.
Yeah, nobody probably even cares to listen about that. So it wouldn't be surprised me if it doesn't even make the cut. So
my show, I wanted to talk about it. I was excited for a second.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But where I was going with that is, my family's history behind the cattle side of things are, my grandpa and 3 other business partners started the very first packing plant in Southwest Kansas, period. So the legacy that they left, is him and 3 other business partners, I want to say, started the very first one to killing like probably 20, 30 head a day, is now 6,000 head a day. And I actually, in the gun safe, have the very first 22 rifle that killed the very first cow in Dodge City, Kansas in 1963, which is just an amazing piece of history to own, because like apparently they built this full facility, here in Dodge City, Kansas. And they're like, they got everything in, they got the cattle in. They're like, well, we didn't work through how we were actually going to kill the cattle. And my grandpa was like, well, I got my gun in my truck. And so he walked out and got this 22 rifle, and they killed him for a few years that way with the 22 rifle right there. And we still have that gun in the safe to this day. So
yeah, if you haven't seen, in which I mean, it's gruesome, but it's very humane how the process is today of how they bring in a pen of cattle and how they harvest the beef. It's if people are into that, but taking a tour of any of the slaughterhouses is very eye-opening and a very cool process of how we feed a planet.
Yeah, absolutely we do. Absolutely we do. So anyway, sorry to derail you on that deal.
Oh, hell no, that's awesome. So back to Levi Shirley Racing. Being in Dodge, you've got to have a little bit of like we talked about, like your car gets wrapped and some work that you have done all the way up in Manhattan. I know you ship your motors out, you do various work here and there. You have to have a little bit of a problem getting guys to work for you, right? You're a one-man show. You race, prep, pack, everything, your own car.
Yeah, it has been it's definitely probably my Achilles heel, is just to get, I don't know, to get the knowledge and the manpower to come work on these cars out here in Southwest Kansas. Like, I have to drive everywhere. All my parts get shipped everywhere, like from wrapping, I drive 3.5, 4 hours, powder coat, drive 4 hours. My motor actually is my only somewhat local piece. It goes down 2 hours south of me. My transmissions go to Phoenix, my shocks go to LA, my diffs go to LA. So we get home from a race, we blow the car apart, and all the parts got sent out. And I let the experts be experts, but having help, I've had a handful of solid individuals that have completely volunteered to help me out. Like, matter of fact, right now we're talking, it's 10:47 a.m. right now. And one of my best friends, Aaron Dupree, has been with me literally from the beginning of my racing career. He's out in the shop right now, putting the car back together so we can go race Oklahoma. So my ultimate goal is to, be financially sound enough to where I can actually hire people to, obviously help me out, because I do everything from the repairs to the work to the disassembly to the washing to the reassembly to truck driving to the race to the marketing side of things to going home. And it has been pretty much all volunteer based, like if I do have help. So I beg a lot of people to come help me out. It's not this big operation that everybody thinks it is. It's just a lot of time away from my family, being the truck driver, being the mechanic, the crew chief, the marketing guy. So yeah, it's definitely a tough thing.
Well, I think to put that in perspective, guys, that, this is the dream, right? This is the dream. I'm going to go race Ultra 4. This is the dream. They have day jobs. They have full-time jobs. And then they're also trying to do this and pull this off solo. And this was exactly my crux. This was exactly where I ended, Levi. I'm in the exact same boat as you, except for I had this day job and time away from family. I realized I realistically cannot race this series. I couldn't make it happen without, really good help, and really good help is really easy to burn out when you're not paying them.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where it's tough. Like I said, I've been very blessed and very fortunate for a lot of the major races. I have help that takes time off of their jobs to come out and help me, just like my best friend here, Aaron Dupree, to Jay Hawkinson from Nest City takes time off of his stuff. My dad, my parents, my wife comes out. It is definitely a group effort, and it is very selfless of them to do that, because I would think if I was in their shoes, I would help somebody else out like that, but it's kind of hard to do. And just like my friend group, like we're all getting older, and we all get we all start to have families, and we all start just things change and evolve. And I'm still the guy that's out racing, with my kid and stuff, where a lot of everybody else have kind of had to buckle down and stick to their day jobs and support their families. And I completely get it. So I'm just the one stupid enough to still be out here doing this.
I don't know if it's stupid, but I think it's amazing personally. That's why I got you on the show. You mentioned Jay Hawkinson. I would like to, big shout out to Jay. Jay might be the nicest guy supporting Ultra 4. Nicest guy. Like I saw, we were at a race. I think somebody had maybe like an air conditioner issue on their truck that was doing something funky. He had a charging kit in his in his toolbox. Walked over. He's working on these other people's car at an event. Like Jay, nicest guy ever. I love him. I love that you have him in your toolbox. I love him having him in just my toolbox of being a friend. That's a man that will give you the shirt off his back and then drive you somewhere to wear that shirt. Like he is that good a guy.
He's a guy that I've had at the Hammers every single year for the past 10 years. We put him in a pit. We put him in the remote pits because he's a guy that came from just farming, oil. Everything, make do with what you have background. Like we always joke like saying, hey, like if we need a wheel bearing out there in the desert, Jay will pick up a rock and like carve it out with his pocket knife, and we'll be able to have a wheel bearing that fits on the race car perfectly. He's
a resourceful individual. Those guys are, they are a dying breed, man. So when you first got into racing, like we talked about you starting, go-karts at 8, which was like a circle track stuff and kind of on from there and how terrible you said you were, wrecking stuff, moving into, stock cars. Was there a good stock car, circle track guys? Is there a good series for that in Western Kansas? I know this is jumping back, but it seems like to get started.
Dodge City had an amazing track at one point in time. Still is amazing, but it started off as an asphalt track. Completely, we're the only asphalt track in forever. So that's kind of where we started. But I've kind of lost touch with all that series and stuff. It was just mainly seat time. It was a cheap hobby to go do. We were still running the trailer shop at the time, so racing obviously was a hobby, but I'm sure there are good stuff out there. I just don't pay attention to it right now. I'm so involved. Like I always say, like if I wanted to go get more wheel time, I'd probably go get in a sprint car modified and just go get more seat time, go bang doors with some people. So, but no, that was definitely fun, but we were obviously as a family, we were out there going to Colorado, New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, all over, wheeling all over as a family. So like, obviously like we loved racing and we loved wheeling. And then obviously XRA popped up and it was like, suddenly we were able to do both. We were able to wheel and race. So why not combine the two?
Right. And then, so XRA, it's 2008, it's Gray Rock, Alabama. It's Levi's first race. It's Wyatt Pemberton's first race as well. You were 81 then because your dad was 18.
Yep.
I was the triple nickel 555. And describe your car. Your car was a single seat Campbell car.
Yeah. So at that point in time, I
remember the car. I just don't remember who built it. I thought it was like a Liberty hood.
Yep. It was a Schaefer's Diablo is what it was.
That's right.
I obviously wasn't around in the, and neither was like my dad or anything, which I don't know why we get confused for that a lot. I don't know. We've just been in it for so long, but we were never in the golden years of rock crawling. We were never in the prime of Las Vegas parking lot. None of that. We were not involved in any of that. So, but this car my very first car was basically one of those golden years rock crawlers. So I was still in high school. I want to say I was a sophomore, junior in high school. And, my parents wanted to get me more involved with the racing side of things because dad was, and they knew I was coming to the age and kind of start that. So they ended up buying me my very first race car. I remember this day, it was $12,000 is what they ended up paying for it. It wasn't on me. They ended up paying for it and paid $500 for a hot shot to get it out of Washington down here to us. So that car was a single seat, like it had a what they call a short star motor, which was basically like a Cadillac North Star with a V6, a little 3.5 liter, I want to say, with a 700 R4 and Atlas. It had, I want to say like Dynatrac Dana 60s front and rear, and little tiny Walker Evans, like 1-inch air shocks on it, front and rear. So yeah, that car was great. It was a great learning experience. And let's just say after the first race, it got updated a little bit.
So yeah, so the first race, was this the first heat this went down? Was it first heat, like the first 100 feet of your very first race ever?
Yeah, like literally this was my very first off-road race ever as a driver, anything, like period. I mean, there was no pre-running, there was no qualifying, you started how you started. So it was my very first 100 feet as a driver.
Well, we got to walk the course, but it was two lanes side by side. And at Grey Rock, you started out on the flush flat top area that was at the top of what was it? Cable Hill. Cable Hill was, people in the Southeast rock bouncers know Cable Hill. Cable Hill was maybe 100 yards behind the start line. And you took off, and then you had a downhill drop after the first 100 feet. So green flag drops. What's Levi do?
Yeah. So green flag drops, I take off like a bat out of hell. There was this little series of drops right off the bat. I am going, all of a sudden it hits the first one, it bottoms out really, really hard. It breaks the panhard bar. It goes to the second bump, and obviously at a 3-link front suspension. So once you lose that front one, it shifts the axle over. It broke the lower control arms there. And the next thing I know, I am upside down. The axle is about 50 feet up on the trail. And I am like, what just happened? My very first race.
Yeah, so we witnessed that. I'd already gone, so my heat had gone, and my heat won. I'm done. I can't remember if we won or got second, in that first heat. But we're standing there and see you launch down this downhill, and you just the front axle just folded underneath, and you just rode it down like you surfed it, like you surfed the front axle down the hill, and then finally it hooked on something. It stayed. You went over the axle and went all the way over upside down in this black single seat. Did it have flames on it? I feel like it had flames on the front, like a flame paint job.
Yeah, I want to say it was black, green, and orange, if I remember right.
That's what I recall as well. And so you just wadded up, and the noise, the sound, you could have heard a pin drop in that canyon, Grey Rock, Alabama. You could have heard a pin drop outside of the crash of your, like a collective, like happened where everyone just sucked in like, oh my gosh, did that just happen as you're careening down this hill? Like I said, you were surfing on the front axle.
I couldn't stop, man. And like you said, the bang that it made, and it was just terrible. I mean, it's a wonder that I just didn't like quit after that. But I vividly remember just being so embarrassed that just had happened, like thinking my life is over. I just totaled a car, the first 100 feet ever that I've ever been in an off-road car as far as racing it goes. Yeah, I remember getting it winched out of there. Then I remember Bender, the guy that actually built the car.
Rob Bender Park, he was there.
Yep, he was there. He built that car. And so we had to get a photo of, right next to the car as it was still upside down and the axle was 20, 50 feet from it. But I remember getting back to the trailer, and I get in the trailer, and I don't know why this will stick with me forever. And I go in there, and Dad has his hands on his face, and he is crying. It's one of the few times I've ever seen my dad cry. And he wasn't sad about the car. He wasn't sad about that. He was sad because he knew that I was a good driver, and then that just had happened. He was more or less just sad for me and for, as probably I would be for my son, because metal can be replaced. And and that just kind of has stuck with me. Well,
yeah, I mean, and you walked away from it, safe car. I mean, I think that was an 1.5 inch chassis. So it was, and you said you took off, you took off as fast as like 4 squirrels chasing the same nut to go. And that's when I look back at old XRA videos, like, man, we were slow,
we were not fast.
No, it's kind of funny. But we were going as fast as we could. But so then the next race that year was Tennessee, and then the following race was Hannibal, Missouri, and you won Hannibal that year, but you won it in a Campbell car. And it was Shannon Campbell. He'd loaned you a car, and to be at the time 16 years old, Shannon Campbell, legend, still legend today, definitely way up on the legendary status back in this era. To loan this 16-year-old kid from Kansas a car, and you go out and beat the field. How cool was that?
Oh, that was insanely cool. I was 16 years old that time. Kind of how that story kind of progressed is we were hanging out in Colorado Springs. My dad had just got done racing a West Coast. I don't even know if he called it West Coast back there, but a Colorado Springs XRA race. And Wayland was there at that time too. And we're all hanging around there. We had my car there, and Wayland could fit in the car because obviously, we had pedal extensions and the seat way forward, because I'm not a big guy whatsoever to be able to fit in that car. Wayland could fit in that car, but couldn't fit in his dad's. So Shannon said, Wayland can drive your car, but how about you go drive mine? And, at that time I was like, Sir Shannon, I don't feel comfortable doing that, man. No, don't be yeah. And so, okay. And so I wheeled it around and, went through the course or whatever, came back. Shannon said, I want you to hit that gap jump at this Colorado Springs. If you can look it up, it was like, at that time, it was like this huge uphill gap jump, like very, very, everybody knows this jump. He said, I want you to hit that jump. And I'm like, no, just drop off the hill, go to second gear, pin it. And I'm like, he's like, just do it. You'll be fine. So I did it, and I jumped it, and, flawlessly. And I was 16 years old at that time, came back around. Shannon's like, that was, great, and like, he's like one of my heroes, one of my idols, telling me that, it's like, oh my gosh, Superman's standing there telling me that I just drove his car like really good. And so, Shannon probably had a few beers in him at that point in time, more than likely after the race, and he's talking to my dad, and he says, why don't you guys take that your next race? It's like, nah, that's really nice. No, it's all right. He's like, you're never going to win in that car of yours. Like, yeah, probably not. Just take mine. Okay. So we hauled it home, prepped it. And the very next race, we took it to Hannibal, Missouri. I remember not thinking I had a chance. I'm very, very green. It's like my third or fourth race ever out there racing. As the cards would fall, I just got lucky. And next thing you know, we're lining up for our finals, and I'm 1 and 2. Like, I just had to complete this next run to actually win, and ended up completing the run, winning the race, taking home top honors in Shannon Campbell's car. And the media went crazy because a 16-year-old kid borrowed the famous Shannon Campbell's car, and went out and won a race. Like, how much cooler, how much more Disney Channel does that get, right? Like, it's awesome. And so, yeah, the rest is kind of history, and I'm very thankful to be able to have that opportunity, because there's no doubt that without that opportunity, I'd be where I am today.
And that field was pretty stacked with some guys that are still in the sport, or even the guys that have gotten out of the sport since. It was still a pretty stacked field, but you had a flawless day. But the guy who was always kind of in that East Circuit to beat was Derek West. And I remember he did not have a flawless day. He had one really bad run. I think it was like maybe heat 3. He had a bad run. He got hung up on a rock, and that took Derek out. And if Derek got knocked out of contention, then it was anybody's game. But up to that point, Derek was always the guy to beat. The nice polished Jimmy's car, and Derek is just a student of the game, man. He will beat you eyes closed.
That dude's an amazing driver. I mean, that guy, hands down, anybody's race. I mean, that guy can wheel a car, period. I remember, Beans, he brought up Derek West. I remember like being nervous, full blown Ricky Bobby up there on the podium, like giving my speech, like, I don't know what to talk about, what to do. And Derek West he said, Hey, Levi Young, he shouts it from the crowd going, hey, just how fast is a 16-year-old kid? And I'm like embarrassed, I'm red. I'm like, fast enough. And that's how I ended my speech or whatever that day, is being just how fast is a 16-year-old kid fast enough. So Yeah.
I mean, that's just a pinnacle. And so you went from, destroyed hopes and dreams 2 months prior in Alabama to the king of the world. You were the kid to beat in a camel car. And that was, it was really cool to know you guys during that and be formulating relationships during that time of my life. And that's one of my amazing memories of you is like, man, you're just awesome. Another memory that I have of that is I loaned. So I had Kelly Kaiser was my co-driver, but at that event we didn't need a co-driver. So Kelly drove Heat 3, and he rolled it, and just end up that gets flipped back over, and the LS oil, it's just smoking on startup, and the picture. I think it's Nolan Grogan, the rock midget. It's his picture, I believe, but it's of my car sitting there smoked. And of course, I'm the one who takes the heat for rolling the car because I could roll a car. I mean, it's known I could roll a car. It's smoking. And at the bottom, right next to the car is your dad and Kelly and Kim Sears watching the smoke show. That's the picture I have. And it wasn't me. But anyway, yeah, man, moving on. So out of that, like, this is kind of the era where XRA is coming to kind of an end because 2007 KOH had happened with the OG 13, the 12. Then 2008 February had been 70 or however many drivers showed up. And it was kind of the buzz that year, like King of Hammers. And then Dave and Jeff put out the thing about 2009. Your dad got the look and the call to come out to King of the Hammers 2009. I got the call to come out to King of the Hammers 2009, and we parked side by side. So we pitted side by side, trailers. And that was back when there wasn't an infield. Like, there was just a drag strip headed out of what we know today as Hammertown. But 2009 was your first year KOH spectating, right?
No, I was actually in school at that time, so I didn't get to go to King of the Hammers 2009. I just got to watch it and like ask my dad about it and just kind of relive it via stories and stuff. Because that was before really. So I mean, there's social media, but it wasn't like it was today. Like, I'm sure my dad and King of the Hammers didn't have it. So, we just had to go by stories at that time. 2010 was my very first King of the Hammers, actually.
And that was just spectating because your first year race, it was 11. Is that correct?
No. The first year I ever went to King of the Hammers, I raced. So 2009, I did not go. My dad was running his single seat Campbell car. And then I drove the old caddy buggy, the old Cadillac, which was the third Jimmy's car ever produced.
And so that was the year that you were, again, statute of limitations, they are out. You can't come back. This story has kind of been circulated. So I know the story very vividly because your dad had called me numerous times when this was going down was, hey, can you circulate the word that we're going to have Levi's 18th birthday, what was in January or December. And we were going to fake your birthday, fake a whole social media blitz on, hey, it's Levi's birthday. He's 18. You end up having a fake ID. And it was all to ensure that a 17-year-old could race King of the Hammers that year.
Yeah. I had just taken a Photoshop class in high school. So I ended up photoshopping my ID, making one that way, and for a fake ID. And it was also, I could race because the rules at King of the Hammers were that you had to be 18 to run King of the Hammers. And Dave Cole said, nope, absolutely not. Nobody under 18 can run this. So we're like, okay. And I was 17. It was in February, obviously. And that particular year, I want to say we raced on February 12th. So when I wrote down my birthday is May 11th. I wrote down February 11th. I got the two confused with the 5. It happens all the time. So we were just, as luck would have it, we were a day short. And we had to fake a birthday party and stuff. And to this day, my dad still wishes me happy birthday on February 11th because he obviously still thinks that's my birthday. So.
Well, but you got a race nonetheless, and you've raced every year since.
Yeah. I've had some good years and some bad years. First year I ever raced it, we lost the motor. We just had some local guy building the motors here. It lasted 60 miles and it blew up. Kelly Halling was my co-driver. Yeah, every year we've raced since, and I've had a great finishing record since then. I can't tell you what that is. I think I've only DNF'd King of the Hammers twice, but yeah.
No, that's a stand up statistic because there's a lot of people who haven't one finish and have raced it that many years or just about right. somewhere in there. And then you raced some sniper fab cars kind of in the middle there prior to 2014, like maybe 12, 13, you raced your sniper fab car. And then, and then you guys built Loretta. She showed up in 2014. Was KOH the first race on that car?
Actually, it was NorCal Rock Race in 2014. So it would have been the second race of the year. That year we ran we ran Layla, my Saldox car at King of the Hammers because Loretta just wasn't quite ready yet. And I like the idea of having two seats. So yeah, that 2014 NorCal was Loretta's first race. And it was consequently, it was Jason Shearer's car. It was his first race on his car, his still current car that he races today as well. And the Red Dragon. No, the Red Dragon was Glenn Helen the second race.
It was but they were all kind of right there. They all kind of got built at the same time. And I mean, Cody Addington is still having good success in his. Campbell's have moved a couple generations of IFS forward from your current car. So, which is why you're, in the scene to be building a new one right now, which is a great segue to talk about that new car and where it's being built and who's building it. Was you were racing Ultra 4 Europe, and you had a lot of success. You won an Ultra 4 Europe series, a couple years?
Yeah. So we actually won there really wasn't a series to win in 2013. We first went over there, Dave Cole, my buddy Aaron Dupree and I went to Glen Helen and for one race by ourselves in a pickup with a car trailer and went out there and raced Glen Helen. Dave Cole was like trying to find somebody to go race over in Europe for the agreements that he would pay half of the freight to ship a car over there. And so nobody else wanted to do it. I want to say it was like between me and Andrew McLaughlin, and Andrew was like, nah, I got too much stuff going on. I'm too busy, whatever. So I'm like, Dave, I'll do it. So after the event, Dave and I got to talk, and he's like, you want to go do that? I'm like, yeah, let me get back, regroup from this Glen Helen race. When do we need to ship the car? And he's like, in like 2 weeks. And I'm like, I got to ship my car halfway around the world in 2 weeks. So we got Layla, which is my current Legends car right now, still own it. Like you said, Shirley, sell nothing ever. and actually shipped that car over there and raced it for King of Wales in Wales the very first year in 2013. It was actually their second year they've actually had that race, and went over there and did, relatively okay. We were in a third place. Had some bad luck. We just realized we didn't quite have the winch to compete with those guys because those guys do a lot of winching. We had like this little tiny, Ultra 4 style winch, which is like has 50 foot of rope on it. And those guys have big twin motor 8274s that can just like pretty much pull faster than they can literally drive. Yeah, I ended up with a third. And then we were planning on shipping the car home. The promoters, there was this new race going, King of Portugal going on in like 2 weeks and after this, and the promoter was there in the UK saying like, hey, you should come race the race. I'm like, nah, dude, I'm kind of burnt out. Like, this was a lot, like whatever. And my buddy Rob Butler, which was not my buddy at the time, he was just a guy, said, hey, you can stay at my house. We'll find a ride for you. You can use my workshop and we can prep your car, and I'll just basically take you under my wing during this. So we did that, and we went and raced Portugal and ended up third there. So we were the only people to do that. So we kind of unofficially called ourselves the 2013 Ultra 4 Europe Championship or champions, because those were the only two races, and we've placed higher than anybody else. So then in 2014, we actually decided to, do this thing right. We shipped Layla back, and we actually built a car with Rob Butler of Offroad Armory over there, and raced the full series, and ended up winning 3 out of the 4 races over there in Europe.
Yeah, man. So Rob Butler, so the first time I met Rob Butler was this past year or the year before in your pits. I'd never met him before, talked to him, but it was, you had called me, man, what year was that, Levi? Like 2015 or 16? You called and said, hey, can you go pick up a car from Port of Houston?
Oh yeah, dude. I forgot all about that. Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, man, no problem. So hook onto my trailer and I run over to the port and pick up Rob Butler's car. And there it is sitting in whatever you want to call the holding area. And these guys are like looking at it like they wanted to come pick it up with a forklift. I think it had been forklifted to where it was at. And I was like, no, man, I'll just drive it. And they're like, how do you drive it? We looked, it doesn't have keys anywhere. And I'm like, oh no, I didn't even know Rob's car, but I think maybe either you told me how to start it or I figured it out, got in, started it, and drove the thing out of there, drove it down the loading dock and loaded it on the trailer. And these guys were just like, that is the craziest car they'd ever seen. I mean, this is the Port of Houston. We just don't have off-road cars in Houston. I mean, we're down on the Gulf Coast and it's just way look like a fish out of water to them. But yeah, then, I don't even put down ramps off the trailer. I just drive it up on the back of the trailer. These guys were totally floored. And then I put it in a shipping container at my shop until you came down maybe a week later to grab it. But my story about that's funny is, and it was an awesome story. You roll up, you've got a red 3/4 ton Chevy, I think, or maybe it was a 1-ton crew cab. Maybe it was a half ton, I don't know, but I just remember this red Chevy and you show up in your little 16-foot car hauler, open trailer, and you had the front axle strapped up with no tires on it. And the tires are strapped down on the bed because you just were saving the mileage on your tires. And so before we could load it, you're like, let me put my tires on my trailer. So you get it on and then you turn around, you headed right back. And it was like, I don't know, you woke up that morning, drove all the way to Houston, which is 12 hours for you, and then loaded it and immediately went straight back. And you hit me up the next day like, hey, I made it safe. Like you did it. It was like a 25-hour turnaround. I think you slept in your truck maybe a couple times, but
Yeah. My buddy went with me and we took turns and he ended up driving the last probably third of it because I was like, I was done. I was done. But yeah, no, we made it all the way home. I remember pulling over because he had to sleep. We were 30 minutes from home and he drove as far as he could. We were just so close to making it home. He had to pull over for a little snooze. But yeah, no, it was like a crazy turnaround. So we had to go get that car. He raced in King of the Hammers in 2015, I want to say. He was the first European to ever complete King of the Hammers in that class with his own car. So kind of cool story.
No, it was a cool car having it in my own shop, being able to look over it and see how he did things differently, European style or whatever, and how the similarities and the differences. But so now you've engaged him now to he's building you your new car right now. So as we talked about the very, like an hour ago or hour and a half ago, we talked about the very beginning, like you're having this new car built, you're having it built over in the UK, which seems totally crazy, but I'm going to throw this out there why I think it's amazing. Right now, you need to you're looking outside the box, right? Where if I do the exact same thing as Paul Horschel, I'm only going to keep up with Paul Horschel. If I do the exact same thing as Eric Miller, I'm only going to keep up with Eric Miller. So I'm going to go completely outside the box. I'm going to go try to get an idea guy that is completely outside. He's inside Ultra 4, but he's outside way of thinking to see if you get an advantage, right? An advantage that these guys have to chase, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely nothing against any builder here in the States. They're all amazing builders. But consequently, when you go to any other builder, you are getting what they want to build. They are not building what you want to build. I'm sure there are people that probably would, but Rob Butler at Off-Road Army is amazing with SolidWorks, and he's amazing with kind of the next level of jig work. He is a one-stop shop, man, from designing to cutting his own tube, the CNC stuff. He has his own CNC lathe. I mean, it's just, he is a one-stop shop. So essentially he can design a car, have it all cut, do everything himself, dial it all in. It ultimately makes an awesome car. He is building what I want to build. So like I said, we have been over this car for the past year and a half, constantly changing stuff on it because we're seeing stuff that works, and he's willing to listen and say like, oh, okay, well, why do you want it like that? And I tell him, he's like, oh, okay, well that makes sense. Versus just like, no, that's the way we do it. It's he is an awesome dude that. Hopefully I can kind of have a one-up advantage on some of these other guys.
Well, I think that's the key to this continually advancing the sport. Either it's from Lauren and Vaughn doing it for marketing, or a guy like Paul Horschel, or, doing it from, car design, or, there's so many people that are involved in that level of car design, but getting that, I don't know, learning from lessons learned, right? Taking what has worked in the past and saying, how can I make it better? And we've seen Ultra 4 cars jump leaps and bounds since you're racing a Schaefer's Diablo with 1-inch air shocks. That was only 12 years ago. That's not, in the grand scheme of things, I have a 13-year-old son, so this is, and he struggles to brush his teeth in the morning. So that's kind of how I kind of gauge things in life. And we look at this to where we're at today. We've grown in leaps and bounds, but over the last 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 years, the advances in technology have slowed down. Like the curve is starting to flatten some. So now it's finding that, as I talked to like Eric Miller about, it's like, shifting a cross member 1/8 of an inch means I can switch out my transmission 1 hour faster, or that's where we're at. We're at this really finite finessing of our designs. And I find that, super fascinating to see what you're doing. So currently the car that Rob's building you it's going to be mid-engine IFS.
Yeah. Yep. It's going to be a mid-engine IFS car. So, but we're kind of dubbing it a 1.5 seater, which is kind of unique because it goes back to like the old debate, like what's faster, a single seater or a two-seater or whatever. And each track, they have different advantages at, 2-seaters, say at King of the Hammers, historically have a little better finishing record. And then the single seaters kill it at short course. So this one we're dubbing the 1.5 seater because that seat, I don't know which one's a half a seat, probably mine because I'm a little dude, but the co-driver seat is not a comfortable position whatsoever. It is it is a little tiny seat that can be used if I want a second person sitting there beside me at a race like King of the Hammers. But 98% of the time, I'll be running as a single seater just because that's what I'm used to with Loretta, and you don't have anybody affecting how you are driving. That's one thing I've just never really liked about a two-seater, and what I've really liked about my single seater is the fact that I can drive my own race. I don't have to worry about hurting anybody. Just like, co-drivers in the past, they have had families they've got to go home to and put food on the table for and stuff. And so like in a bad wreck or something, like that's always in my mind and how I drive. But knowing that I can go out there by myself and not have to put anybody else's lives in danger. Yeah, like that's huge. That's what I love about it. And it's funny because you have the co-drivers, like the couple times I've either had a passenger from a Legends car to actually going and driving somebody else's car, for them. Like last year I went over to Europe and ran King of Britain and Axel Berman's car. I noticed like the co-drivers and stuff, they make these like involuntary noises, like when they're uncomfortable, like if I go into a corner too fast, they hear like they have like a and it like slows me down and just screws with me, man. It gets me out of my train of thought. I hate that. So that's what I really, really like about the single seater is just the fact that I can race my own race, but at a long race, like I said, this new car will have a secondary seat.
Did Axel Berman just have a birthday?
Well, I'm sure he has one every year.
Every year. No, I feel like I just saw somebody wish him happy birthday like yesterday.
I'm sure he did. I did not see that actually.
I will say, so what you wouldn't know about the big seat, little seat, the last car that I had that I was, when I was actively racing on a regular basis, that car had 2 different size seats. When you looked in the car, the headrests were the same height, but the passenger seat was 2 inches shorter. The seat bottom was 2 inches higher because you got a drive shaft under you. That was how that had to happen. So when you looked at the car from the outside, they looked normal, but when you got inside, the passenger seat was mounted 2 inches higher because the passenger seat was 2 inches shorter. So you
that's the way we're going to be on this, except mine's going to be 2 to 5 inches taller than my co-driver's seat, just so I can actually see over the hood.
There you go. Line of sight. So to be a co-driver for you, they're going to have to pass some pre-criteria that you can't be over 5'2". You need to weigh less than 100 pounds. you're kind of borderline getting into having a female co-driver situation. Like you're going to have trouble finding a dude that small. I will volunteer up Blaze Melanson. He's Blaze. I don't know if you know Blaze, but Blaze, he's co-drove UTV at KOH a bunch. He's about the only guy I can think of. He's probably 5'4", but he only eats Twinkies and Ho-Hos. He does not eat any protein. Breadsticks. He lives on a diet of breadsticks. So I don't think you'll find anyone smaller. So I'm going to throw his name out there. He'll be like, hell yeah, I'll co-drive for Levi.
Yeah. Come on, man. Come on, Blaze. I need a hand here, but we'll make it work. And it's funny. We were talking about shop help earlier and stuff like, consequently, I had to build my own. I have my son, which I'm going to have in the shop as much as I can, and he'll eventually be the one in the co-driver seat. So hopefully he doesn't grow too fast, but he's going to have to really to be able to co-drive the next year or so.
They start getting handy around 10, 11, and then you lose them for a couple years through puberty is what I'm told. I'm currently in the lost phase. I'm hoping his brain comes back, but I love him, but
it's currently up his butt.
Yeah. And I look at my dad and I'm like, how did you deal with me during that age? And he's like, I've purged that from memory. Like, I don't even remember. I remember it was bad. I'm like, okay, good. I mean, I guess that's how it's going to work.
Dad and I just constantly got into it at that age too. Like truthfully.
So, I mean, that's a very valid point, Levi, as you're talking about building your own and creating your own shop help for the future. So you're planning out 10 years into the future with your own kid being your help in the shop. What other lessons learned do you kind of have for, either new guys coming into the sport to glean little nuggets of knowledge of what it's taken you to be an overnight success in just under 10 years? And maybe even the veterans can look at you and say, what has been, little tidbits that maybe, I'm not asking you to open up the Bible and, hit us with everything that is the Levi playbook, for Levi Shirley Racing. But are there anything that just strikes you as how you deal with sponsors or approach sponsorship or something for either a new guy or maybe even a veteran competitor to glean to maybe help further their program?
Yeah, totally. So out of all of everything that I've learned through that, which it has been a trial and error thing, it is to totally be patient through all of that. I never open up the door to a sponsor and say, I need this much money. It's like, no, you don't approach things like that. Everybody thinks it's like, that's how you do it. Like, if you don't ask for it, you're not going to get it. Which I see that being part of it. But the main deal is, get your foot in the door, under promise and over deliver, and just be patient and develop those relationships inside of those companies and go from there. A lot of my companies I've been with my entire racing career, and it has been a process to, from where I started to where I am now, and developing those relationships inside the companies on getting there and getting to that level of hey, maybe there is some cash or, sponsorship available, beyond just product. It has taken some serious time to develop those relationships. But like I said, always under promise and over deliver. That is probably some of the best, the best advice I can give, and be patient. Like it doesn't happen overnight. Nothing happens overnight. Like, some people go oh, I raced the whole season. Why don't I have sponsors? It's well, what did you provide? So you've got to be able to provide a service to these companies. And I look up to guys like, Von Gittin and Lauren on what they're doing from a marketing standpoint of things, going hey, where do I need to change my program at, and look at how are they doing things? And I've had some very good conversations with both Vaughn and Lauren on that.
Yes, I constantly see, and this has been brought up by many people, just certainly through COVID, we saw racing stopped, but marketing did not stop. Marketing did not stop from many people's perspectives, but I will say the one that always got me, I've said it in the past, is that Lauren's ability to continue pushing marketing out for his partners. You can call them sponsors, whatever. I'm to the point, on some of these guys, they are definitely partners. You guys have a long-standing relationship that you have moved forward with in time, and you're constantly giving stuff back to them. Like I saw just Lauren yesterday was at the Sand Show that end up getting canceled today for all of that, for non-compliance and whatever worked out there, which I'm still, I think us as a country are kind of going to be livid about this type of stuff when we do look back on it. But Lauren was, had his whole fun haver set up out at the sand show. And, he's just always constantly working to create that extra value to give back to his partners. And so when he goes back to the table looking for money for next year, or the following year, whatever, it's easy for them to have the conversation, be like, yeah, man, we saw what you did for us there. Yeah, that's no problem for the ask, or, hey, you're worth it, we just don't have it, or something along those lines. I don't know. So yeah, Levi, I think that's, where you've taken these lessons learned from, like Lauren and company, and applied them to yourselves. I've really seen, you really have stepped it up in a lot of ways in leveraging what we've seen. Again, guys like Lauren and Von Gittin give back to their sponsors. You've certainly not a slouch in giving back. I can open social media and see Levi Shirley stuff on the regular. But, one of the lessons learned that I've seen out of that is, what those guys do is, again, Lauren out at Sancho he's out mixing with the crowd, doing autographs. And I mean, I've seen you out doing the same, giving autographs, but there's some lessons learned around autographs. No?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just getting out there, getting involved with your fans. Like I'm a sucker for kids, right? Like I give away more body panels than I keep, because and also, like, what am I gonna do with those body panels? Like nothing. So I mean, I am a sucker on just like getting that younger generation involved, because without that younger generation, we do not have a future sport. So getting those kids involved are huge.
And who do we see start doing that? Like on the regular, you can always see this guy doing it. Who was that guy?
110% Shannon Campbell. I have seen that guy give away his national trophies to kids. Like that is just like not such a selfless act right there.
Completely. I mean, and so he gave my son his Hard Charger hat from Davis, Oklahoma, a couple years ago, and my son will bust that out, randomly. And, it was the week before COVID kind of hit in March. We were in Florida. We were on South Beach, and we were having dinner at a restaurant in South Beach. The Clevelander actually was where we were eating, and it was a party. It was spring break was going on. So there's people partying all around us. My son's wearing his Hard Charger hat. So I had to, take pictures of it, close up headshots of him, and text to Shannon and be like, look at this clown. He's wearing your Hard Charger hat down here on South Beach, just because he still enjoys it. The kid still enjoys it. It's still, he knows where it came from and what it took to earn that. And at least my kid appreciates it.
Yeah. Heck yeah. I think most of them do. I really do.
But I kind of segued there, and I didn't, hold you to it there. Lessons learned on autographs. You have a pretty terrible story about doing an autograph that kind of didn't go the right way.
Yeah. Probably easily one of my most embarrassing stories that I have ever been involved with. So this year at King of the Hammers, we're heading through tech and contingency, and this lady comes up to me with her kids, saying like, and I have my posters there saying like, can you sign these for me? I'm like, no problem. Like I have no problem, signing these posters, whatever. Well, she said, you can sign my back. And that's what I heard is like, oh, you want me to sign your back? Like, oh, okay, weird, but yeah, whatever. I mean, I've signed t-shirts before, so I whip out my permanent marker and sign her shirt. And then she hands me another poster thinking I just signed a poster on her back. And I was like, oh, and by that time it clicked, like what she said and what she wanted. She just wanted me to use her back to sign her kids' posters, not actually sign her back. And I just got beat red in the face. And it was like I said, easily one of the most embarrassing things I've ever done. It was like, oh my gosh, you said to actually use your back to sign the posters, not actually, you didn't want your shirt signed. And it was like not even a race shirt or whatever. It was like a regular tank top or something, like, and I was just like red, man, and embarrassed. And her kids thought it was hilarious. I'm like, you guys have got to come by my pits here. Let me hook up your entire family with LS81 shirts, because like that's how embarrassed I was. And so they came by about an hour later and I hooked them all up. But yeah, that was a hilarious story.
Yeah. I mean, well, now they have a story. It's certainly memorable. They, burned Levi Shirley into their psyches.
Yeah, definitely.
Exactly. So what is all the future for Levi Shirley? I mean, we've got, obviously nationals just happened this past weekend. I hope you won. I hope you put it on the box. There's a lot of other people I'm pulling for as well. Cause I like the whole field, to be honest with you. I just want to see good racing, good fun racing. I want to see people having a good time. I want, drink beers with you, or I will have drank beers with you at the point everyone's listening to this. But, as we look forward to KOH 21, what are we kind of expecting? Your new car will not be done by then. So what's kind of we kind of skipped that. What's the timeline and the event horizon on it kind of showing up on the scene?
My projection and my goal right now are probably February, March of 2021 is when I'm officially get that new car and really start working on it. I'm a believer that Loretta can win King of the Hammers. It's a great car. I'm so comfortable in it. I mean, I was like super close this year. I believe I was one of the fastest cars there. So I want to go out this next year and prove that car can win King of the Hammers. And I'm also a firm believer in a race car is not a good car until it is at least 2 or 3 years old. All these cars have what we call new car blues. And so, with that, I don't want to put an entire season on a new car just yet. I want to get out there and I want to get testing on it. And I definitely, my goal is to win, another national championship. Like I said, I don't think that car is going to be a contender until possibly the second or third year till we kind of work some of the blues out of it.
Well, you just got to put miles on it, put miles down there in the Arkansas River bottom, down the wash, run it out, and then break it down, put it back together, figure out what works, what doesn't work. Just keep doing that. And then she'll finally be ready versus what we've seen. We always see those guys that show up with a brand new car at Hammers with no test time.
Yeah. It's kind of a tough, just racing Ultra 4 in general is a pretty tough timeline, right? So we race year round, it seems like we are getting ready to wrap up here, our season here. It's the end of October. Then we're going to have about a 2-month break is all, if you really even call that a break. And then we're going to be into 2021. So the season goes so long and it starts so early that there are hardly any time. I mean, there's very, very little idle time because you have family holidays in the sense, right in the middle of that. And so that is really the only time we, as Ultra 4 racers, ever get a break to produce a new car is before our Super Bowl, which happens to be our first race of the year.
It's kind of crazy. It's backwards, but it is what it is. And it's been this way for a long time. And I just don't see that ever changing.
Yeah. If I had a choice, I wish that King of the Hammers would be pushed back about a month. I think that would give us more time with our families, holidays. So we didn't have to, cause there are so many holidays like, Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's to where I'm in the shop because I know King of the Hammers is coming right up and there is no time to waste. So it's kind of unfortunate that, we have to do that. So, but in the same aspect, I know there's people probably out there listening going like, dude, you could push that race 2 months and there's still nobody would be ready for it. So you might as well just get it over with in February and quit whining.
I was just going to play that devil's advocate. I'm glad that you brought it up on your own. So next future, we kind of talked about, you and Miranda maybe thinking about, a little play buddy for Dawson. That sounds pretty exciting. You've got a new car in the works. Hopefully with the new car comes maybe, better finishes, more lucrative sponsorship deals, right? The ability to hire help, move the program to the next level. Those all fair futuristic goals for you?
Yeah, absolutely. That is definitely, my goal. I know it's possible. Just kind of got to stick my head down and do it, and commit. Yeah. Good things happen when you commit, I think.
Oh, I'm a firm believer. Well, hey, Levi, I want to thank you again for coming on the Talent Tank as we ran through everything I planned to cover today. Did we bust out everything that you wanted to share with the world?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I have had a blast talking to you, Wyatt. Thank you for having me on. Look forward to maybe doing another podcast in the future with you.
Oh yeah, we'll circle back as you get the dust and the issues worked out and the bugs worked out off of this new car, and you start having success in it. Man, Levi, I hope you had success on this past Saturday. A couple days ago. I do look forward to having a beer with you this week. Guys, I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode number 36 of the Talent Tank, and listening to my good buddy Levi Shirley out of Dodge City, Kansas, racing the number 81 Ultra 4 car. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Come back next week. We're out.
Thank you for listening and taking a dive into the Talent Tank. Please like and subscribe on Instagram @the Talent Tank or our website, thetalenttank.com.